And it's time for Data Point to focus on the cost of a student who wants to join grade 10. Let's take a look at the numbers, how they look like. According to the Ministry of Education guidelines of 2015, the government finances the free-day secondary education by 22,244 shillings for every learner who is in a public secondary school or now public senior school. For urban boarding, these are institutions that are boarding institutions in major urban areas. They can charge up to 53,000 shillings, 554, and all other boarding institutions can charge up to a maximum of 40,500 shillings. Ideally, day schools should be free as per the guidelines, but the reality obviously is different when it comes to management of the institutions. But when it comes to payment schedule, both the capitation released to the institutions and also when parents are paying, it is paid on a ratio of 50, 30, 20. 50% in first term, 30% in the second term, and 20% in the third term. That's the ideal situation, but sometimes the Ministry of Education or the government has been late in disbursing, and therefore it means that for parents, they should pay for the first time. If the maximum fee for a boarding institution is 53,554, as they join Form 1, they should be paying 26,000, not Form 1, but grade 10. They should be paying 26,777 shillings. In Term 2, they should pay 16,066 shillings, and in Term 3, that should be 10,711. Or the boarding institutions paying up to 40,500 shillings. First term, they should pay 20,000, 12,000 in Term 2, and 8,000 in Term 3. So those resources in the first term must be paid as the learners are joining. Now, let's just break down of these resources. So what do they go to finance? And this is a model fee structure from a cluster 1 school in the country, to be specific, in Western Kenya. So the vote head for repairs, maintenance and improvement. So out of the 53,000, 2,000 shillings goes to that. For infrastructure development, no allocation for this school. Co-curricular activities is about 798,000 shillings, or rather 798 shillings. Medical and insurance, 0 shillings allocated for that. For boarding and meals, there's a figure of 30,385 shillings. For other vote heads, including transport, electricity, and others, to the tune of 20,371 shillings. So you can see how the fee is distributed. So other schools will do differently, but also for the lack of infrastructural development, sometimes it comes with an additional cost, which we'll be looking at shortly. But let's take a look at the next one, which talks about GOK's capitation. So the 22,244 shillings that the Ministry of Education releases, what does it go to finance? It finances inactivity fees is 1,500 shillings. For medical and insurance is 2,000 shillings. For SMASE is 2,000 shillings. And for other vote heads, we are talking about 9,400 shillings. And for maintenance and improvement, an allocation of 5,000 shillings. So some of these resources are sent to the institutions. A bit of it may remain at the ministry headquarters for joint procurement of services or goods. Now, the other thing that we want to look at is if you are to take your child to a day school across the country, what would the cost implication be like? So for a grade 10 learner, obviously you have to have uniform and shoes. Despite the guidelines by the president, there's still a requirement to have uniform. So that may cost you up to 7,000 shillings in the day schools. And of course, this is significantly different from boarding schools because there are certain items you'd require if you're boarding in a school versus what you require if you're just moving from home to school. Lunch program may cost you up to 13,000 shillings. So for this particular school, you have 5,000 shillings in the first term, 5,000 shillings in the second term, and 3,000 shillings in the third term. For the students will have to have a meal. For remedial classes or sessions, they pay up to 4,500 shillings for the full year. So it's 1,500 shillings every term. And this is based on concessions at annual general meetings of parents or Parent Teachers Association meetings. The total amount now for that institution is coming to 24,500. So these are day school. It is a cluster 4 school, but the government is still supporting by giving 22,244 shillings per learner. Let's focus on what else that we know in as far as this is concerned. So the other cost that you'll find if you're joining grade 10, you'll require the uniform itself. You require, if it's a boy, it's trousers. For girls, skirts, but also you may find trousers for some institutions that are girls' schools. There will be blazers. The uniforms must have logos. The shirts and blouses will have to be provided. The socks, the games and PE kits. There is uniform branding. Sometimes it can be expensive expensive, especially in urban areas. There's pullover and sleepover that you require. There's pajamas, and of course, weekend wear for some institutions. What else do we know of as you join, especially a boarding institution? You require the storage box, you require towels, you require slippers, shoes both for sports and for the leather shoes. There will be stationery that may be required, tuition materials, pocket money obviously, and personal garments, shoe polish. And these are some of the things that parents are having to deal with, especially when they're explaining that they cannot afford to join the institution. So what's more, in summary, if you're joining a Cluster 1 school in an urban area, you will require school fees of up to 53,554 in a year. Remember, first term you must pay half of that. For uniform and others, that may require you some 15,600 shillings. It may be higher for some schools depending on where they are located, where you're buying the uniform. Is it at the school? Is it privately? Is it at a particular shop you've been sent by the school? You require bedding and mattresses. It may cost you up to 7,000 shillings. Personal effects, including towels, slippers, and others, may take you about 5,000 shillings. Extra charges, which is disclosed usually on the day of admission or at a later date when the meeting is held, especially schools that have said there will be an orientation meeting for parents joining early February. You may be informed that you require between 10,000 and 20,000, usually for development. It could be for motivation. It could be for remedial classes. That will be explained in that place. And if you're to do the math, you arrive at an estimate of 101,000 shillings for a student who is joining grade 10. So that may vary depending on the level of the school, the location, and of course, that's very important. You require pocket money.